Aloha, and welcome to the Joystick Show, a weekly podcast where three friends from Hawaii talk story about the things from pop culture that are bringing us joy. Shakas and Mahalos for checking us out. If you can, please subscribe on any and every podcast platform and here on YouTube. Leave us a 5-star review, which is greatly appreciated and helps us out a ton. I'm your co-host Thomas, and today we are beyond hyped, mon ami. In this episode, we chat with our new friend, the incredibly talented AJ LoCascio, the voice behind Gambit and X-Men 97. So you don't want to miss this deep dive into his journey as an actor and all the crazy excitement around Season 1 of X-Men 97. All right, stay tuned.
The Joystick Show.
All right, everybody, we are so lucky. We have AJ LoCascio in the house, and you should know, I mean, he's an actor, he's a director. Some of the roles he's done is Gizmo from Gremlins, Secrets of the Mogwai, Prince Lodar from Voltron, Marty McFly, Han Solo, but you might know him most recently from his role as Gambit on X-Men 97. AJ, thanks so much for being here. How you doing?
Of course. I'm sorry it took so long. Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Man, I don't blame you for taking long. I've seen all these different interviews and YouTube videos you've done. It's like there's a massive Rolodex right now, but rightfully so, because Gambit, I think, stole the show for at least the first half of the season. Like, how crazy is it?
I like to think so. It's been crazy. Yeah, it's been wild. I mean, I'm such a big Gambit fan, period. So for me, Gambit's always been my focus when I'd watch the show, but for other people to pick up on it. And for all the love of Gambit love to come out has been wild, especially since I feel like my whole life, I mean, this is the case with most things. You're a fan, you're part of the crowd yelling, "Yay, I love this!" And now the yelling is happening at me, and I'm like, "Whoa, this is overwhelming and weird," because I'm a part of the story now, which is really, really crazy. Like every once in a while, I'll just text one of my friends. I'll be like, I still can't believe they let me do Gambit, or I'll text Jake from X-Men. I'd be like, I still can't believe you guys let me do this. So I don't think I'll ever fully take it in. It's a lot. And right now the hype has been wild. So it's overwhelming.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder though, what are you busier with these days? Is it the podcasts and the interviews, or is it all the dates because of your shirtless pic that was posted from Out magazine?
Well, it's not the dates for sure, unless you're considering dates with my chihuahuas, hanging out with them. And it's funny, the random interviews definitely takes up a lot of time where it's like, okay, I'll do a podcast, but I've also sort of tried to, as much as I love doing these, I've tried to kind of slow it down, because it's 5,000 degrees in my booth, and I have to wear some kind of like tank top because I'll die in here.
Yeah, you do. You do.
But also, you gotta show off I gotta show off my Muppet Vision 3D love.
Nice.
Anyway.
Yeah, well, we'll just show you. I mean, the shirt's not coming off.
Oh, you got a Gambit shirt?
We're going to be showing off
Yes.
shirts.
We're going to show
Amazing.
shirts. There you go.
Is that Hot Topic for the Gambit shirt? And then I want to say Target for your shirt? Is that what the...
Amazon, sadly, it's
okay.
Amazon for all things nowadays.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. Sorry, my phone just went off, and it's the Star Tours jingle, so I'll turn that
Ooh.
off.
That's a good sign.
But yeah, no, I've been busy with just work, and also I make little Halloween figurines called spoops that I've been painting for 6 months, so that takes up a lot of time. But yeah, that's mostly what it has been.
That's very cool. Very cool.
I don't even remember what the question was. It's like, what have you been busy with? Kissing my dog.
Everything.
Yeah, and painting.
Well, that goes back to you have such a long acting career of both animation and video games. Can you kind of tell us a little bit of the difference between those two aspects?
Between animation and video games? It depends. It's weird. So with a lot of stuff lately, so with a video game, there's kind of two ways to cut it, where you're either brought in and you have a bunch of random disconnected lines that are just like a laundry list. And it typically doesn't come in a normal script format. It's just like, here's a line, here's a line, here's a line. And they'll tell you like, you're in a helicopter. And then you just sort of bark out whatever it is. But then there's also the other side where it's like motion capture, like with God of War or Jedi Fallen Order, or and what else have I done? I don't remember. There's a Horizon where you go in and you physically are in the space, and that's wild because it's like you're in spandex. It's super itchy and uncomfortable, but like you're in a big white asylum room where you're actually interacting with actors, and that's for me, that's my favorite thing to do. because you're pretending, it's like, oh man, I'm holding a lightsaber or I'm shooting a blaster or we're in a spaceship. And so that's the best. But for animation, it's either you're in a room by yourself and you have like a regular film script where someone reads the lines like the director and then you respond to them, or like for Voltron, we were in a room full of people that were all, it was like the whole cast, so we'd all be acting together and standing there and waiting for your turn, but you have people to bounce off of, which was for me the highlight. I'm really hoping for X-Men, if I get called back in, that we, if somehow something happens with Gambit, that I would get to, or if they ask me to do someone else, that I'd get to sneak into like a group session. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
I'll play, I don't know, Toad or someone, just so I can be in a room with them. But
I have a feeling Gambit might be back in one way or the other, but
who knows? We'll see. We'll see. I have no idea. I know nothing.
Who knows? Of the three of us, I think one of us is.
But yeah, you never know. But I think because of the pandemic, all that sort of traditional, you see footage of like Chippendale Rescue Rangers or Pinky and the Brain or that stuff, where they're all in a room together, and so we haven't really gotten to have that experience, except once, like a while ago, me and Lenore got to do something really quick together that I don't remember, but it was like just basically like an intro and a couple of lines just to be like, hey, you guys should meet. And so that was really cool, but that was more traditional than usual. But I would say in traditional animation, you get a whole big room of people and it's really fun.
Yeah.
And a lot of stuff doesn't get done though, because typically someone's making a fart joke or something.
Or I bet I can do this noise, and then it gets everybody.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
Like Nolan North on Voltron was constantly like, he's like got the biggest dad energy, and he would just come in and make every kind of dad joke you can imagine. So the entire session would be devoted to whatever Nolan's dad joke was, or Tyler Labine, who was Hunk on the show, would just start making fart jokes, and then Josh Keaton would start going making fart noises, and then
that would get me
it's hard.
every time.
It's like you get like 10 Roger Rabbits in a room. It's really tough to contain everyone, but it makes it fun.
That's awesome.
Oh God,
Frank, it's cool. I think I'm going to jump around a little bit. We had a question on improvisation.
You do?
And so it's like,
Sure.
How much in animation are you allowed to improvise? With X-Men 97, it seems like you were saying it's more traditional in the script, but like, is there room to kind of play with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of them, if you have a director who's cool, which is not always the case, sometimes you get people who are like, this is the word, it's gospel, you have to do that. I don't know why I made him German.
Nightcrawler.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
There's usually leeway, just because it's like, it depends on the show. I mean, like for the Crude show, which now I've done 2 of those series, which is wild, there was a ton of improv, because it was just like, what's funny? What's a funny way to add on to the end of this or add things? And sometimes that'll become its own joke. Or there was like a character for Crudes that I did that was called, it was Bait, as in he was bait, C, as in the letter C, like ABC. And I just was like, I'm going to do my friend Ivan, who I went to college with. And I was just like, I did the line, and then I was like, yeah, man, at the end of it. And they thought that was really funny. So I was like, I don't know. Yeah, man, let's do this. And then they started writing him into the show as Batesy, Baitsy. And then he got his own like whole arc because of this weird improv I did. And his catchphrase, they started writing in the script, yeah, man, at the end of things.
That's
so
awesome.
There's like weird things, like that was a very freeform, fun show. So they allowed us to do that. But with like X-Men, I would come with like my homework of different Cajun words or things that I had a friend of mine, Chet, record of like what would be appropriate in this situation to say. And so I would try to throw that in. But it doesn't, I think the only thing when he flies, Gambit flies out of the X-Jet, he says like, Mon Dieu, and then Kia when he sees Genosha, and I think those are the only ones that made it in. I tried to change the coffee when Gambit's serving coffee to cafe au lait, but they kept it as cappuccino or something, and I was like, I was trying to make a Cafe du Monde reference, but
that would have been awesome. That place is
they didn't let me. But I tried. But you also do so many takes that inevitably you'll start improvising. Like there's a thing for the Disney cruise that I did a while ago that if you are on the Marvel Days at Sea, I voiced Thor, which no one would ever know because there's not like there's credits. But I improvised a whole thing that they kept. So on the loudspeaker, when Thor was like, "Come meet me at the promenade," I've done a whole thing. Like I improvised a whole thing about writing a book, and they kept it in. And I was like, "Oh, that's amazing!" So you never know where they're gonna let you play.
Yeah. In that moment, do you try to embody Chris Hemsworth, or are you just like, hey, this is what Thor sounds like in my head, and
Yeah,
yeah,
it's a little bit of both because it's like I think whenever I'm doing something that's an actor, like or a live action person, there is that feeling of wanting to embody his sort of strange energy. Where I'm not trying to. He's got a sort of weird round way of speaking, and just a sort of silliness, I guess, is Thor has sort of a blunt confusion. He's determined but confused, and maybe doesn't have the highest IQ, so he'll try to sound very brave and robust, but then he's not sure about whether that's the correct thing to have said. Yeah, I guess you're trying to sort of just play the same notes as like there's how do I this is a weird way to say it, but like there's some composers out there that do John Williams-esque music where it's like, oh, they're parodying or trying to do things that sound like John Williams for a Star Wars video game or whatever. And that's kind of what I feel like I'm doing in those situations where it's like you're trying to just remind people of that character or play those notes, which is always an odd way to think of it. But yeah, I don't know if that made sense. Hopefully it did.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
All right.
And then you were talking about when you're improvising, different directors play it differently. Has there ever been a time where a director's given you a note that you've really taken to heart and has improved your voiceover work?
That's a good question. Yeah, there was something I did where the character. How did he say it? It was for a movie that was canceled that I'll never be able to mention, but it was something for Disney, and it was awesome. I was doing like a British character that was like, here's how we need to do this. We need to go over here and do that. And it was just sort of someone that, like a professor of some sort, let's say. Mm-hmm. And the director kind of kept being like, more, and he kept using one word over and over and over again. And I forget what it was, but he just kept saying like this, and I wasn't getting it. And then he went, he's passionate about everything. And I went, oh, okay. And so every little moment, I was like, yes, this is what we have to do. We have to go in here and we investigate. And he was like, that was it. He was like, once I said that changed everything. And I was like, well, that's sometimes what it takes is just finding the right phrase to get into someone's head.
Yeah.
Because he kept saying something like louder or something that was like kind of empty or meaningless. But then he said he's passionate about everything. And it's like, oh, okay. Every nook and cranny he's fascinated by. And it completely changed how I read for the rest of the movie. But yeah, that happens every once in a while where someone says something that it's like it finally breaks through.
Yeah.
I was doing something recently where I was singing and the director kept saying softer or like less hard, less intense. And I was like, but I have to project. I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
And then the person who was with me playing the piano had me run through a bunch of scales. And he kept going, start as loud as you can and get softer, 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 softer. And there was this like, oh, okay. Once I reached a point that he liked, he went, keep it at there. And I was like, oh, I couldn't have just discovered that on my own.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, singing this robust song softly, I was like, am I going to be out of tune? It was really, really weird, but it took sort of some creative re-engineering to, with all directing, it's one thing to have a vision and be like, I want it to be like this, but it's another thing to be able to communicate that and in a creative way. Because sometimes you'll talk to an actor who could be the greatest actor on earth, but if you're not able to get them to understand what you want, you're not going to, it's just going to be weird. And so you have to be able to find a way to turn over your communication and re-investigate it and go, well, try it like this, and hopefully something sticks.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting question because I don't think I've ever been asked that before.
Well, to double down on that, I'm wondering, is it more common that a director is wanting to collaborate with you to find the right voice, or do they look for that voice first and hope that they don't have to change much?
Depends. I mean, like with Gambit or Han Solo or Marty McFly or Figment or whatever, there's always something you audition to get that voice, and then sometimes you'll go in, like with Figment was weird because I auditioned trying to sound like Billy Barty, and that was sort of I had studied his voice and years before I'd even gotten the audition. And once I got in, they were like, so we want to change it up. And I was like, what do you mean? And so they were like, we kind of just want to use your voice doing Figment without any modifications. And I was like, oh, okay, that's not what I had prepared for.
Right.
So instead of it being me doing Billy Barty's voice at his normal baseline, which would sort of sound like this, and then they speed it up, I had to kind of bring it up here and keep it in my head, and there was just a different sort of process. So yeah, some voice directors will, like with Han Solo, it's weird because sometimes they want a voice match, like they want Han Solo, and other times they'll be like, we don't really want Harrison Ford, we want sort of this other thing that sits in his same vocal range, but is more playful or different than Harrison Ford would normally do. Which is always a bit of a trip because you're like, I want to do the thing, I want to do it as accurate as possible, but I don't want to upset the director. So it's, a lot of directors typically you'll get hired for a voice, and usually they'll want that voice, whatever it may be. Like for Gambit, they wanted it to sound like Chris Potter at 20-something, or however old he was when he started. And then they kind of let me off the leash as it was going. So they let me loosen up and not have to be so strict about it. Yeah.
When you were talking about like the director giving you the right word or trying to communicate it seems like that's a big thing these days, where it's like, I like working with this director because they're able to translate whatever their thoughts are to me and I can pick it up. But it also made, for me personally, it made me think of my wife. It's like, I could say something to her. It's like, oh, we're going to do this. And then she's like, I don't even know what you're talking about. But then her friend can come in and say the same thing that I feel like I just said. I'm like, and she's like, oh yeah, totally. Like, wait, what? Didn't I just say that? Like, what's going on here?
That's so funny. I have the reverse with my girlfriend where I'll be like, okay, what do you want me to do? And then we'll have a long conversation. I'm like, why didn't you start with that? Whatever the thing is. And it's like realizing that it took that entire conversation for just the one word to sneak through, or whatever it is, the slight twist of a word to go, oh, now I get it. Okay, you want to paint the wall yellow, not, like, whatever it is.
You're saying legal notepads. I wasn't getting it. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I don't understand. You want lines on the wall? So much of human existence is being able to communicate well. And when you're a director on the fly, trying to be able to, and also it goes both ways, because there's times where I could see a director struggling and I'll offer them, like, not through any, me trying to be like, oh, I know what it is, but just trying to connect with them, where I'm just like, what about this? Or do you want it to sound like this? And they'll go, oh yeah, that's what I meant. Or try it like that. And so hopefully, if people are open to that, you can make those suggestions, because sometimes you get a director who's technical, like they might be someone who's a project leader but not a director, but they were given this position of director because it just made sense. There's a lot of stuff like that for theme parks. Sometimes you'll get someone who's like, yeah, I designed the theme park, or I designed the thing. All right, now let's get a performance, and it may not be their vocabulary. They may not be used to that. So sometimes there's an intermediary, sometimes there isn't. So yeah, it's a two-way street.
Definitely, that's something you'd have to adapt to that I would not have expected. Because
it's very strange.
Yeah, we think all these people are super qualified for that. Not saying that they don't deserve that position, but maybe they don't come from that artistic directing background that you might be familiar with. So that's crazy. You also said something about, like it's very demanding. It seems like you said something about possibly straining your voice and finding the right level. What strategies do you use to manage your vocal strain and maintain your like vocal health, especially when you're doing something that's, very important, like portraying Gambit?
I mean, I'll typically warm up beforehand, which usually just consists of like very basic humming and scales, and I'm not like going me, but like just singing and trying to warm up.
Some yellow letter, and I can't even say it.
Yeah, exactly. It's not my area of expertise. I've taken some vocal lessons to try to help with singing and stuff, but I typically will just sort of hum and warm up and get my, can't just like wake up and then go voice something. I mean, you can, but trying to just get your, it's like stretching before you work out, where it's like, yeah, your muscles are sleepy and you need to try to make them more malleable and warmed up so that when you do it, you don't get hurt. And that's, so far I've been okay, but I do know people that have like, blown out their voices and stuff from just jumping into a session, and it happens.
Sorry we threw that bad juju on you then.
No, I mean, it's a thing. I've definitely hurt my voice doing stuff, but mostly in my younger years where I was just like, what do you need?
Yeah.
So. Yeah. And then with this one, of course, it's such a high prestigious demand, I guess I should say, not so much prestigious, but the fan base is eager for a Gambit. So when you're prepping for that role, what does it take to develop that position? Are you looking at, what Chris Potter did and trying to just replicate it as much as possible? Or are you wanting to add your own little spice to it?
So in the beginning, it was definitely like the audition I had done initially was just match Chris Potter at 20 something or 30 something. And so that's just what I did. I listened to it over and over and over again. And then when I sent in the audition, I had also done, I want to say I added The Name is Gambit, Remember It at the very end of it, which wasn't part of the line or wasn't part of the script.
Really?
Because I typically will do that with like Gizmo and things like that. Like I'll just add a bit of something just to like kind of stand out, but without being annoying. Or hopefully it's not like a now here's an entire monologue. But yeah, I'll typically add a little something here and there. But with Gambit, it started off where they're like, we just want Gambit to sound like Gambit. And then, as it went on, it kind of, they loosened up, and it was more just about him being very intimate. He was intimate with everything. He kind of wanted to romance everything, for lack of a better word. So that we kind of kept playing with that, the idea that he was always seducing whatever he was kind of in the scene with, I guess is sort of the
makes sense.
The roundabaut way of saying it.
Those beignets were turning me on, so that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. That was kind of the through line that we went with, which was definitely part of the original Gambit, but I think that's just, as we played with it more and more, we got to loosen up and not be so strict about like, it has to sound like him. So yeah, which is fine by me because it's a lot less pressure. And I did also try to bring in my own, just from listening to different Cajun like podcasters and interviews and stuff, try to bring in a little bit of that, but it's also, I wouldn't say that the Cajun accent, that the authentic Cajun accent we associate to Gambit. I don't think that Gambit's accent as we know it is the most authentic Cajun accent. It's kind of the Canadian idea of what an American Cajun accent sounds like. So it's its own separate, because think about like when Chris was doing that back in the day, how the hell would he have listened to a Cajun accent unless he found like a PBS documentary on tape?
Right.
Because there's now I can Google and just be like, oh, cool, or reach out to someone and be like, how would you say this? But at the time it was, people, we forget how sort of
it's so distinctive. That's, as a kid, that's the accent you're saying over and over again as you're running around the house.
Right, yeah.
And so if he didn't kind of make it so a little bit outlandish, I don't know if it would have stuck with us so much as kids.
Right, totally. I mean, the Cajun accent has there's a little more twang, and I won't attempt it now, but there's a bit of something else to it that it is not necessarily Gambit. Gambit has sort of taken it and finessed it in a way that it's different. It's elevated and cartoony and comic-y. It's a weird balance because I had someone say to me, it was very sweet, but they were like, I just want you to know that like your Cajun accent was maybe, and I was like, look, I know it was a conscious effort. I know it's not the most accurate accent in the world. I was just trying to do Gambit, which is his own special thing. So
it's like when like American media used to do like Australian accents, and it's just like so over the top. You're like, down under, good day, mate, which I obviously can't do, but it's just like, whoa, they don't say that at every line. So
they do. A shrimp on the Barbie. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. But so I think this kind of leads into something I've heard you say in numerous places about this was your dream role. So you only really auditioned for this character. What was the most fun part about doing the role? And then like, why just do the one audition? Why not go for a bunch of other ones? You're crazy.
Because I'm a psycho. Because I'm a crazy person. Well, so there's two elements to that. So the most fun thing was just doing it. I mean, the saying the name is Gambit, remember it, which was a whole session basically on its own where we were like, we're screaming it, we're whispering it, we're doing it in pain, we're doing it. And then the line we wound up using was something we did months and months later where we were dubbing it over the actual footage. So we wound up doing obviously what was in the show. But just saying some of the phrases that I'd heard him say from the original series was like really surreal. I kept like grabbing my face and I can't believe I'm doing this. Like, it's wild. And it's something that has also become, I guess, as actors, is something that we've now gotten to experience more and more as things get rebooted and you get to now step into the shoes of your heroes. And it never stops being surreal. It's especially now that it's not a fan film in the way that there are, you know what I mean? It's not something that like, not that there's anything wrong with fan films, but in other words, it's a continuation in a way that is rare.
Right. Like Bat in the
like
Sun, it's like this character meets this character. This is how we would imagine it happens. But this is saying this is the official story of how it continues.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
Because it's there's always, no matter how you slice it in the back of your head, there's always a feeling of like, is this real? Is this connect?
Right.
And somehow they did it with X-Men, and people accept it as being canon, which is wild.
Flawlessly. Absolutely.
It's crazy. But what was the other thing? Oh, the auditioning process. Yeah, so it's stupid, and I know I've said this in other interviews, but like, it's so dumb to get a list of like 30 characters and be like, I'm only going to audition for this one. I would never recommend anyone do that, but that was just what I wanted. I was like, listen, if I don't get this is, it's X-Men. I get it. It would change my life regardless to be any character, but it was the one that I felt the most like, this is the character I want. Like, I wouldn't want to be in the booth and some other guy's voicing Gambit. I'm just looking at him like, you got.
Right.
Like, it's such a weird, I don't know.
Yeah, but it's incredible that you stuck to what was inside your gut, because
it's
you've been in the business
insanity
for a while. It's like you could have played it safe, but you're just something
I should
in your
have.
heart just was like, I need to do this. That's pretty amazing.
It doesn't make any sense. It's very, anytime you get cast as anything, it's a miracle. Because you're thinking about how many, dozens we do a week or a month or whatever it is, and it's just like, you just don't hear anything back. So to get this, and as far as I'm aware, I mean, it's the weird thing about these projects is you always assume someone that's like maybe a famous voice actor, which this is often the case for a lot of roles where they'll just get called in. It's like, yeah, we'll call in so-and-so.
Yeah.
I'm not anywhere near that status yet. Maybe X-Men will help, but like, I stood in line like everyone else, like I didn't there wasn't any special like, oh, you're on a list of 5 guys that we're going to reach out to and we want you. It was literally just everyone got this audition.
Yeah.
And so it makes it even more crazy, that I was like, I didn't audition for Beast or Wolverine or Cyclops or any of those guys because I was like, I just want Gambit. He's the guy I love. So, because to me, X-Men is Gambit in my own world. Like, I would watch the show for Gambit. So I was always disappointed as a kid that he wasn't in the movies. But, I mean, in hindsight, maybe that was for the best, because he kind of is his own thing. It would have been weird
and
if
now you could do it in live
Wolverine
action.
and Gambit. Who knows? I don't know if they'll ever cast some random voice actor. But hey, if someone's feeling brave, I'll gladly audition. But yeah, yeah, it's insane. Don't ever do that. If there's anyone listening, don't ever do that. It's crazy because the odds are way stacked. They were way stacked against me.
That's like buying one lottery ticket and then winning.
It's nuts. It's nuts. I mean, maybe if someone believes in cosmic karma, the idea that like I poured all my effort into that one audition, I didn't mess around with, because you have 2 or 3 days, when you get these things, and so all my effort was just doing that audition over and over and over again. So maybe it would have been half as good or half as concentrated if I had also been like, or maybe less if I had done other characters. But I was just like, this is all I want, so I just did it. I mean, I re-recorded it like 15 times. So I just kept doing the audition. And then I did send it off to like a friend or two. I was like, you never heard this, but like, does this sound good? Does this sound right? And for the most part, they were like, yes, or they'd be like, change this. Yeah. But yeah, it's bananas. I don't know. I'm still not sure why or how, but I'm thankful for it.
That's
so
awesome. It's great. Yeah, sorry, I'm going to probably go off script here too, just quickly. I'm wondering, you talked about you had cosplayed as with your little brother. Or just I don't know if it's your little brother or older brother, but with your brother.
Little brother, yeah.
What was his reaction to finding out, like, yeah, I got Gambit?
He lost his mind. He was like, what? It's crazy because he does film and stuff. Film Valor is his Instagram, I believe, or maybe it's different, but it's he's crazy for this stuff. So him and I both were like, I don't know how to communicate it to him. He doesn't know how to communicate his excitement to me. We're both just like, what is this? It's very surreal. And yeah, he freaked out. I freaked out. And I also had to keep it a secret for so long, which is because, for like 3 or 4 years, I had to keep it a secret. And that's also crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. And there's the sort of superstition whenever anything good happens to you as a human being. I think we're all like, I want to talk about it because it might not happen. And so up until the show was finally released, I think every one of us was just like, oh, God, I hope I'm not recast, because they could at the last second be like, screw it, let's get Jeremy Irons to play Gambit or whatever.
Yeah, Matt
I don't know why I went with him
or something.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Matt's a great guy; he could do it. But yeah, no, I don't know. Yeah, my brother and I just lost our minds. So it's a shame he's not close. He lives on the East Coast and I'm on the West Coast. So if we had met in person, I'm sure it would have been like, ah! But yeah, really surreal for all of us, as in me and him. And that's it.
That's awesome.
With the casting on this one, you were talking about how sometimes people just get called back in. And this is kind of this weird hybrid cast where, yeah, Lenore is Rogue, you know? And so some people were just coming back in. And I was thinking, when you were talking about playing other people, I'm like, oh, you probably should have gone. If Chris Britton didn't come back, you would have been a great Mr. Sinister as well.
Huh, interesting.
But
that's a cool character. I would have loved.
I mean, right? I bet it'd be fun to play.
I don't even think I don't think he was. I don't remember him being on the list because I have a feeling if I had seen Mr. Sinister, I maybe would have been like maybe. But I don't remember Sinister being there. They might have already reached out to him at that point because I know that there was sort of this long casting process where some people were part of it, others weren't, and it was a long and lengthy and confusing because it's interesting too to talk to some of the cast where I'm like, I'm pretty sure that my callback was in like June or July, and then some of those were in like September, and maybe I'm misremembering it, but it sounds like it was a long, annoying process for the casting directors. And I had friends that were possibly going to be certain characters that I was like, oh my god, we could be in this together. And then as people dropped out, I was like, oh no, it's like being in a horror film where I felt like the final girl, where I was like, so it's very scary. I remember like just sitting in a park with my dogs, like just reading Gambit comics, trying to like, I don't know, manifest it or like just get my brain off of it, but also I couldn't stop thinking about it. Really stressful to take a swing at something like this.
Is that where the idols of Gambit on your windowsill there came from?
Yes,
your like shrine.
There's the I don't know what the Funko soda thing, and then the little guy that came in like the 4-pack, which which is hilarious.
Oh yeah,
looks like sorry
awesome.
I burped. I didn't mean to. It looks nothing like the render on the back of the box, which is funny to me because in the back of the box is like fully rendered. And I was like, that's not. But man, to have a little 6-inch action figure of someone I voiced is. And I think Gambit's the first one that is, because I have like Han and Emmett and stuff, but they're not specifically to the thing that I did. I don't have like, it's not like they, for Emmett, they're like, as seen in the Lego movie ride, whatever it is. Right. But that's specifically like, oh, that's my Gambit, which is really wild. Yeah, I just realized I have a bunch of shit. Sorry, can I say shit? Yeah.
But rightfully so. I know. I'm going to reach over here, let Frank take it away, but I'm like, I gotta show off my Gambit now while we're at it here.
Mine's collecting dust. I forgot to pull them off. I got them in all the different shelves. I got the Funko Pop where he's throwing it over there.
Amazing.
There you go.
Yes, I love that figure.
I'm like, I know that
guy's
guy.
over. He's in the. Mine is hanging up on my wall, and then I have the loose one, which I couldn't fit in here, up on my desk as well. I have so many Gambits, but I also had so many of them before the show was even a thought. Because I just have a little IKEA cabinet full of X-Men stuff, primarily Gambit. So it's something that I've just been collecting, and now when someone gives me Gambit things, I'm like, yes, add it to the collection. So I'm like General Grievous, where I just open up my cloak and I put another Gambit inside.
Just multiple Gambits you've collected off of corpses, for sure.
I have a metal one in here, so maybe I moved him. I had the one apparently made of lead that was recalled is somewhere in here.
That's amazing. Do not get poisoned by that.
I know. It's got a very sharp staff too. One of my friends gave it to me in college, and I've had it ever since. But someone just told me recently, like, "Oh, those were the ones that were recalled," and I was like, "I didn't know that."
Yeah,
but I haven't been eating it, so hopefully I'll be okay.
For sure. It's probably gonna be worth so much money down the line too. You're gonna be like,
rare.
If I need anything, I can retire off this. So.
Just a little poisonous Gambit.
Definitely. So you talked a lot about like the casting process for the people that did, make it, and then now you've been able to interact and hang out with all of them. Who do you think you're the closest to now out of the cast? I mean, I'm assuming Lenore, but it might not be her.
Well, Lenore, it's weird because when I met Lenore, I was like, I feel like I've known you a million years. Like, even though she just feels very familiar to me as a human being. She's very open and sweet and kind and just is that person. If you've watched one interview with her, you're like, yep, I get it.
Totally. We got to meet her at WonderCon with you, and then LA Comic Con. She's so sweet. She's just totally amazing person.
I don't know how she does it too. She's everywhere. Like every time I look at my phone, I'm like, how? Like, how they talk about Taylor Swift, like on a jet to go 1 mile. I'm like, how did you get in Canada and then Belgium within 3 hours? I'm like, she's everywhere. I'm very close to Lenore now, thankfully, which I would love to hang out with her more, but hopefully at different cons and stuff we'll get to. But Matthew, who's Magneto, I've known for years.
Oh, wow.
Which is really funny because how did it happen? He texted me, or maybe I texted him because I was like, who's playing Magneto? And when I was in my first session, they're like, oh, a guy called Matthew Watterson. I was like, that son of a bitch. Because there became this running joke between us that if one of us books something, the other one's going to show up, because we just started booking things together, which has been great and fun. And
awesome.
But it got absurd, where I was just like, how are we in every project together? But he was Kratos and I was Atreus for years in the previs for God of War. So before they brought in Chris and Sonny, who were them, the actual actors, we did all their blocking and body movement and scenes and stuff. And then we had our own characters on the actual game. And then we worked on the second Jedi game together, and we were in the Crude show together, and we were in Doom, where he was Doom guy and I was the intern, that was talking in his ear the whole time. But we've known each other for years now. So him and I are probably the closest. I'm developing relationships with Holly, who's Jubilee, who's wonderful, who's a Spitfire, and Chase, who's Cyclops, and Guy, who's a puppy dog human. I mean, the whole cast is incredible, and it's a JP I've known for a long time, who's Morph.
Yeah.
If I'm forgetting anyone, I'm sorry. I got to look at the who else is there. Okay, Wolverine.
So everyone.
Bishop.
Which
Isaac I've known for years too, who's Bishop. Him and I have worked on some stuff together, but not really. He was on Voltron as a character, but we didn't really get to cross paths. So yeah, it's wild. It's weird to be in this group of people that are all we've all had very distinctly different careers, and now we all get to sort of hang out and be friends. And Ross, who's Xavier, I've known of through friends for a long time, but now we actually get to hang out. It'd be like, I love Indiana Jones, you love Indiana Jones, you know what I mean? Silly things like that, where you're like, well, let's talk about stupid stuff.
I love you in Walking Dead. Let's talk Walking Dead the whole time.
Yeah, I've never seen him in Walking Dead, but he seems like a nice guy.
Oh, he's so good.
I'm sure it was a lovely role. I didn't know the show was still on past a certain point. I think I stopped at season 2 or 3 and then just forgot it was on, which is no knock at Walking Dead. I just literally went and watched other things and forgot. Also, it was so stressful. It's like Game of Thrones.
It absolutely is.
At a certain point, I was
essentially a soap opera with zombies.
I was getting too stressed out. I can't. I need soft, happy. I'll just watch Bluey.
Right.
And
and that gets pretty intense too sometimes when they're about to move and you're like, what's going on with this family?
I can't deal. Sometimes Bluey's way too emotional. And I can't deal with it.
Definitely.
Now, obviously, Gambit. I'm assuming Gambit's the answer to this, but what do you think is your most satisfying role in the past?
Satisfying role? That's an interesting one. I think Han, voicing Han for Lego Star Wars is probably, because it's unlike other things. There's sort of Marty McFly when that first happened, but
because that was your first professional.
That was my first
role, right?
role. Yeah, which is crazy. But there's a certain amount of rehearsal or preparation with Han that for years and years and years I've been working on, and not even working, I would say, just interested in doing the voice and doing impressions. And it was something that I would do in private. I wouldn't really do it for friends because I thought that was kind of goofy or maybe disrespectful. I take it too seriously. So to get to do Han in a couple different things, but I think the video game, the Lego Star Wars, the Skywalker saga, where I was replicating lines of his, was for sure the most satisfying, because it felt like the thing I think of, I was talking about with John Williams, is it's like getting to play a jazz song that you've heard a million times and trying to hit every note. There was a moment that was awesome, 2 moments actually, where I sent my audition off to my agent and she responded and said, hey, you accidentally sent me the reference. And I said, that's not the reference, that's me. And she was what? I was like, there actually was no reference. And she's like, I didn't even know that. She's like, all right, sending it along. And then when I went to record, Matt Wood, who's he voices Kylo Ren, and he's also funny General Grievous, who I just brought up in the original prequels. They would play the reference as in the original trilogy Han. They would play it 2 or 3 times, and then I would do my line. And there was a handful of times where he went, okay, AJ, go ahead. And I was like, I just did it. And he went, what? And I was like, I just did the line. And he was like, oh, I thought it was the reference playing more. And I was like, nope, that was me.
Wow.
Which is the coolest compliment. I'm not trying to make myself sound super badass.
No,
but
it does sound like the biggest compliment you could get. It's I already did it. They're like, what?
I just did it. Yeah, which is great, because I was giddy. I was like, dude, I just did it.
Yeah, that's great.
So that was really, because it's also you only I don't know. My mom and dad would always give me crap as a kid. They'd be like, "You're so athletic. Why don't you do any sports?" And I wasn't interested in sports. I just find them boring. But then I started doing gymnastics, and I was like, "Oh, this makes sense to me. Like, I like this. Spider-Man does gymnastics, and the X-Men do gymnastics. Like doing flips and stuff." So I finally felt validated, and then I stopped doing it because I was, I went to college, and there was no way for me to do it.
Right.
But with like Han Solo or Harrison Ford in general, there's this feeling of like, man, I've been practicing this my whole life. So to get to finally use it, I'm like, I feel so satisfied. And hopefully there's more one day. But in the meantime, I'm just thrilled to bits that I got to do that. And the Gambit thing is out of nowhere, to be honest. Like, yes, I had done like, are you an assassin or a thief? But that's not, I wasn't working on it in the same way that I was working on Marty or Han or I'm trying to think of what else, Figment. Those were things that I would obsess over. Like I know Corey Burton does that too, where he's like the Haunted Mansion voice in the Haunted Mansion Holiday and Captain Hook, and he's also an obsessive person where you'll just listen to things and repeat them for fun. So to get to do that with different characters, that to me is always the most satisfying, even though they're not original per se. It's like, oh, cool, I get to perform my my tribute act, I guess. It's very fun.
Oh man, that's so amazing. I feel like this question is going to be a little redundant then based on what you said. But,
no, yeah, please go ahead.
Which is like, I guess, how do you continue to grow and increase or improve your craft? Like, is it just repetition? Or are there specific things that you do to really get this technique down besides just practicing over and over again?
I think it's always evolving. It's weird because I have different weird facets of like for Crudes, the character I do is such a goofy. He's like, "Wow, cool, mom. Yeah, whatever you think." And it's
I
like
love that voice,
it gets
by the way.
Oh, I do too. I can't believe I've gotten to voice him for a decade now, which is crazy because it's not a character people really talk about. Like if I go to a con, I don't even bring prints of Thunk because no one has ever asked. Once someone asked me for a Thunk print out of like however many hundreds. But I love that character, and so there's so many different facets. Like with Thunk, you're always trying to find the silly in things, and there's some characters that are like that where you're trying to find the joke, and working with people like Gray Griffin or D. Bradley Baker, where you're watching them do that, and you're trying to pick up on like, okay, what's appropriate, what's funny, when are you allowed to do this is one aspect of it. And then for things like X-Men or God of War or any real video games that are grounded, there's another side to it where you're supposed to be real, essentially, where it's like, this is a real, like Skildor in God of War was an interesting one because they wanted me to err on the side of cartoony. Like that was one of the things that Matt and Eric told me, where they were like, we want you to kind of like, he's a bit of a modern character to some degree. He's basically what they said is like, just do you. And I was like, do you want me to make him more grounded? And they're like, no, we kind of want to make him his own playful thing. So I had to sort of find the middle ground between real and sort of silly in a way. And then, but yeah, they're all, I guess for on camera or for video games and stuff, things tend to be more grounded. And so trying to find an honest performance is something you're always chasing, because it's very easy to forget when you're behind a microphone what feels authentic. Whereas, like even like Prince Lotor has like there's a pump to the way he, there's like a specific sort of unrealness that would maybe work in Bridgerton, but not necessarily in, something more grounded. So yeah, I guess for me, it's just trying to constantly pay attention and evolve and hopefully, be listening and learning as much as possible. But I don't know. I'm just making this up as I go.
You're doing a fantastic
just
job.
Just as a quick side note, quick side note to this conversation is as you're dropping names of characters I love, I'm like getting more and more geeked out on the end. I'm like, oh, that's so cool.
Wait, which character? You mean D and Gray, or characters?
Characters, yeah, the characters you've played in the past. It's just like, oh, that's right. God of War and stuff like that.
Because I've never played it, but I know Frank, you've played God of War, right? And I'm telling you, how is HBO? Well, I guess Prime's actually working on it, but that needs to be a live action series for sure. It's such a wonderful story of father and son.
Crazy. I don't know how they're going to do that. It's so big and so crazy. I can't even imagine who they would cast as Kratos and who they would probably be Dave Bautista or something. Right. It's funny how if you guess in Hollywood, like people like Dave Bautista is like, yeah, he's got it, or The Rock, The Rock as Kratos. Sure, why not? He pulls in a bunch of money, put him in there, he'll be fine. Anyway, God of War's great.
Definitely.
Well,
go for it, Frank.
Well, I wanted to ask, just to touch on that, the fact that you were saying, your practice and stuff like that. did you go to any schooling for voice acting? I've actually gone to school with some audio engineers, and we had to like interact with voice actors, and there's very different energy in the room. The theater kid energy with the nerds that like to like push buttons up and down.
That's so funny. I know. I actually, weirdly enough, when I'm around theater kids, I recoil, which is no shade on them. It's just I just can't get down with that energy, which is I like. That's what's so funny about voice actors is there's two kinds of voice actors. I feel like voice actors that want to do their job and go home, and then ones that are desperately seeking validation and want to do impressions for you. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with either one. It's just a different kind of energy, and it's extrovert versus introvert. And I'm very much so an introvert with extrovert tendencies, where it's like I like to perform, but I want to do it in its proper venue. But yeah, what was the we're talking? Yeah, I didn't go to any sort of formal. I went to film school to make film, and then
there you go.
was kind of doing stuff for friends and stuff, and that was what I guess my intro to acting was. Other than doing stuff on the side for, as a kid, I'd make movies, and I was a Jack Sparrow impersonator for years in college, is like how I made money in college, which is a wild thing. But that was just
theme park or like...
No, just around the East Coast. I would like fly. I would get hired to like go do treasure hunts in Florida and like open up Planet Hollywoods as Jack's. It was really wild. But it was just me with the costume I made, and then it became this little side business. Is how I survived in college. Yeah, it was very odd. So I guess it's something that I have a tendency for, but I also just I find theater energy to be fairly exhausting because it's very big, and I just want to chill out. And then when we're on the stage, let's go. But in between, I'm like, all right, I'm tired, guys.
Yeah, you're just a contained rocket. It's like you gotta just point me in the right direction, I'll go, and then that's it.
It's a nice way to say that. One of the first, so I got to work with Christopher Lloyd on Back to the Future, and which is a crazy thing to say. And he's like that, like very much so, where he's super, super quiet between takes. And then once he goes. And it felt very validating to be like, oh, Christopher Lloyd, who's one of the most robust, biggest presence in anything he's in. He's always so loud and kooky and crazy. Like between takes, he was just like, okay. He was just like mumbling. And I'm like, huh, interesting. I was like, oh, so you don't have to be like, hey, buddy, looking good. Have you been working out? Like,
yeah, that was a good impression
don't have
of
the
me.
Capacity for that.
No.
Actually, that fits you perfectly.
Was it? Oh, I'm sorry. Well, no shade.
I understand the sentiment. My wife's very much an introvert. I get it. I'm too much for her too.
I just get tired. I'm like, hey guys, let's all calm down. I'm tired.
Totally.
And I do when I'm around close friends, I'm very much so verbose, but yeah, when I'm around strangers, I tend to do the opposite, where like I'm just quiet and just kind of waiting for my turn. That's why I don't like going to. I have my agent's waiting room. There's a waiting room sometimes we'll do auditions from, and it's every theater kid you've ever seen in your life, and they all know each other. Like, dude, Rod, looking good, man. And I'm like, I want to go home. So I tend not to go there.
That's awesome. So I'm guessing with that, do you have like your own routine then? Are you like listening to music and just reading, or are you? In those moments, are you like, okay, I'm forced to be social? Like, how do you lock in to when I'm gonna have to perform in a second?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. You mean like for acting in general?
Yeah, like for that, like you're in the waiting room for a role, but again, you have like everybody else trying to audition for the same role. Like, what's your process in that moment?
I mean, I guess to me, hopefully, I mean, I do get nervous, obviously, especially for like X-Men. I was nervous as hell. But I don't know. I think of it like someone fires off a gun at the beginning of a race and you just run. Like where in other words is I don't feel necessarily like I have to psych myself out. There's a lot of method actors that I find very odd or disarming, where I'm like, I sort of prefer the British way of being, where you see like Ian McKellen, it's like it's a job. You show up and you do the thing.
Turn it on. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like if you hopefully when you read it and you understand it, that's mostly all you need, or it should be. Like people who are like, I gotta get into the headspace of this moment. I just don't. It's a me thing. I don't understand it because I don't feel it's healthy to have to live through those things. Have to be in that space for longer than the script or the shooting requires. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying it's the best way. It's just my way. As I like to. All right, now I'm on, and usually I have enough of that nervous energy when I'm. Like for Gambit's a good example of like going in and doing the callback. I'm so nervous going in that's that energy. Is I'm like, oh hi, okay, yeah, like I'll read the thing, and so all that's spewing out. But I beforehand I'm not like in the waiting room like trying to get into character or anything. I just kind of hope I understand it enough that you can go from 0 to 60 when it's time. And sometimes it takes a couple takes or whatever, but yeah, I don't know. I don't really know how to answer that in a way that's not pompous. Okay, I don't know.
That was great.
It's a job, you once it's like a race. If someone fires the gun, you start running then, and hopefully you know how to run at that point, so
right.
Yeah.
That's something I'm going to be paying attention to, though. Like with Christopher Lloyd, I'm thinking back to his Taxi roles, where he was kind of like this Kramer-like character bouncing up the walls. And to imagine that he's able to turn that off and back on just as a testament to his acting performance and stuff like that, even more so. That is not just him impersonating himself. It's actually him like, all right, time to be this character and go.
It's like playing an instrument. I mean, I use that analogy a lot, but it's like if you play the trumpet, when you're hanging out with your friends, you're not playing the trumpet at them. Once the trumpet goes up and you get the music and you start sight reading, like I'm blown away by, I've gotten to sit in some sessions for like the Gremlins score when they're scoring it. It's like, here's the sheet music and go. And it's like they've never seen it before. Like it's the same sort of headspace where it's like they weren't practicing. I mean, they may be practicing in the room beforehand, but for the most part, it's like you have to sight read is kind of how I think about it is even if I know the script, you're kind of sight reading in that way. And that's maybe not something I've really heard anyone talk about, but that's kind of how I view it. Is like, I'm not playing the trumpet in the waiting room. It's like, all right, time to play the trumpet. Hopefully I know the notes or whatever it is and I can read. But yeah, it should hopefully be something that people I know that obsess over roles. This is my own side thing. I find it very mentally unhealthy, like Man on the Moon, or what was the Jim Carrey thing where he's like in character the whole time.
Bought into that role, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's healthy. I don't think it's right. It's a job, you can enjoy it and live in it when you're in the moment, but it shouldn't extend beyond the scene, because otherwise you're hurting people, typically, is how that goes. Or I've been on sets with people with even just mocap, where this one guy who was, I won't say who it is, was playing a character where he was being very mean to me the whole day. And then afterwards, he dropped character and he was like, hey man, it's nice working with you. And I was like, no, it wasn't. I was like, you were an ass all day. And I could see, and someone told me, it's like, oh, he's a method actor. And I was like, yeah, I don't like that.
Yes.
There's no reason to be mean to me all day because you're here to play some character that, I don't enjoy that. It makes everyone's life miserable. But I understand people want to escape from reality, so they use that as an excuse.
So this makes me really wonder. Okay, you get the script for episode 5 of X-Men 97 this season.
Yeah.
Right? You're so stoked. You get this dream role. Take me through that.
I was gutted.
What was it?
I was gutted.
We were all gutted, my friend.
Yeah.
That was a tough day.
I was so upset. Yeah, they called me before, so I got the role, and then I want to say like 2 or 3 weeks later, they went, hey, so you're still on the show, don't worry. And I was like, but... And they were like, we're going to kill him off after episode 5. And I was like, what? And I was like, what? Because my agent had called me and was like, this is a big deal. There could be multiple seasons. Who knows? And I was like, yay.
Yeah.
And then, it's like, you get 5 episodes. And I was like, oh. And so I had to go through like a legitimate mourning process of like, wait. No, it was not only is it Gambit, who's like one of my favorite characters ever, but yeah, it's a job as well. It's something that hopefully, helps you eat. And you hope to keep working and there's a lot there to unpack where you're like, oh, I have to now live through this death, physically too, where you have to go through the effort of dying, is a lot. It's a lot to unpack, and I was really upset. And I kept being like, you can't just like kill Morph again. Sorry, JP. You did it once. It's easy. I'll show you how to do it. I have the episode. Sorry, JP.
Yeah.
I've joked to JP about that a bunch. Where I'm like, I should have just killed off Morph. But no, that would be terrible. I love Morph's probably my favorite character in the current iteration. Yeah, it's so funny.
Didn't expect how much I would love that character.
Yeah. I hope Morph stays around forever. Morph's been through enough. But I love that character to death. I'd be very upset. Honestly, I mean, there's not anyone that I would want to kill off unless it's something introduce someone new and you're like, oh, who's this? Oh, okay. You can get rid of Gold Balls or whoever that one character was. That
Gosh, I would love if
anything.
Gold Ball shows up. That'd be amazing. I'm such a fan of the
reference
Coco
him,
era.
right? They reference and it's not like you make Gold Ball. I feel like Jubilee said something about him.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
she
So
did.
I'm not crazy.
Exactly.
But yeah, the process to wrap it up in that answer is I mourned. I legitimately mourned, but in its own way where it's fictional. It's just painful. But I was like, listen, I'm happy to be any part of this. If I was just his fight efforts or a cough for Gambit, I'd be thrilled. So to get to be any piece of it is still such an honor. So it's bittersweet, but it's also like, yeah, it's cool.
that episode too, the way that we've had so many discussions about that particular episode, of course, as X-Men 97 as a whole too, but the way that things left off with Rogue, where you're like, man, does he know that Rogue chose him? And
no, he doesn't.
Betrayal, it kills me.
It doesn't. He's not psychic. I mean, that's how much he loves her. That's the thing that kills me, is he loves her regardless, and whether or not it's reciprocated, he's still going to do what he can to protect her and save the other mutants. And it's my feelings about it is, in that moment, this was his way of feeling useful, as he felt like he wasn't necessarily part of the X-Men or part of the group. He felt like he had nothing really to give. And so in that moment, that's what he had left to give, was his sacrifice. And so that it makes sense. I mean, I think that it completely wraps up. It's this sort of rare writing that I feel like we don't get in a lot of shows where their setup and payoff and character arcs make sense. Their motivations make sense. Like, it's such a rare thing that it's so well done that it justifies itself. It's not like just some needless death. It has stakes and it has consequences in a way that so few things in modern storytelling do. And I think that's why it sort of blew up the way it did. It's a rare thing from older storytelling.
Very true.
That, we need more of.
So relatable, and I think that was one thing we complimented in the show. It was like the setup and the payoffs were fantastic in this, and compliments to the writers and how you guys performed it. But Frank,
thank you. I'm but a small piece, but they killed it.
Yeah. The fact that the community, I mean, we all mourned together when Gambit passed, and it was not just shock because, oh my God, they killed off a famous character, but also being like, man, the situation, the way it built up, and it felt earned and the right. That's the thing, right? When Gambit's doing it, you're like, this is what he should be doing, and that's the part that sucks. It's not just like, they killed off a character for nothing.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's because Gambit has been kind of the butt of a joke even in the original series. He's kind of a jokey, silly character. And rarely was making hard decisions in the way that like Rogue or Jean would be. So for him to make this decision in the wake of the circumstances, it's like, yeah, it's brilliant. He got his due, or he got his respect in a way that is not something that has happened for him much in the past. So, because I love him, I see lots of depth in Gambit, and I think he's a fun, he can be a bit of a goofball, but in a way that's like, I don't know. I just love the shit out of Gambit. He's such a charming character.
I'm hoping we explore him and Storm's friendship at some point in the comment, because I really think that's
maybe flashbacks. They could do the original, the original run where Storm's a little
I forgot
girl.
Gambit's not coming back.
No comment.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know nothing.
You don't know? Okay.
A little laser will show up on my forehead if I even speculate. But yeah, I mean, hey, there's that origin story, which I would love to see animated. You know what I'm talking about? Where Rogue becomes a little girl, and it's like in the very first run of Gambit stuff, and Gambit shows up and is like trying to, anyway.
Yeah.
With Manny, I think is the character's name. There's like an egg.
I'm not sure, but I think there's so much they could do with it. But I will say, and I know you're like, I can't say anything. We got Apocalypse picking up a card.
This is true, but I don't know what that's about.
I
know
what are
nothing.
your thoughts on it?
It's cool. I love it. I don't know what it means.
Okay, perfect.
Oh, man.
Who knows?
He's got that NDA pinned right in front of him.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, there's also a shotgun attached to the NDA. No, I mean, it's even if I could speculate, I wouldn't. I like to open my presents on Christmas, so you know what I mean. Like that's how I
love it.
It's not fair for me to speculate one way or the other. But yeah, I mean, I love Gambit. If it became the Gambit show, I'd be okay with that. Just Gambit only. Yeah, Gambit and Rogue. Yeah, that'd be dope.
Now, if I remember correctly, you had said you added the "Remember It" line. Is that right?
No, I didn't. Oh, I added it to my audition.
To the audition,
but not in the final thing that was written for me.
Okay,
yeah.
The way that Lenore uses it later on when she's fighting, and just like the impact that had on us as fans when we're seeing Lenore use Gambit's lines is like, Beautiful.
I got goosebumps just thinking about it. Yeah, no, I didn't. That was very much so added. And I do remember being nervous about how to say that correctly was a thing. As I mentioned it before, but like we went through a bunch of different iterations of, are we yelling? Are we whispering? What is the volume of it? And at some point we yelled it and I was like, I don't like that. I was like, and they were like, yeah, we don't like that either. Yeah, it was really goofy.
Like
and I mean, I guess it makes
something?
sense given the context. Yeah, exactly. Like, ah! But I was like, I hate that. That feels very disingenuous. Yeah, no, the only thing I added it to was my audition, if I remember. I have it somewhere on my computer, but I don't know if I'd even be allowed to release it.
Yeah, maybe not.
But I'm pretty sure I added something from the cartoon, and it was probably that, which is fortuitous, I guess, in hindsight.
Yeah, man, I feel like I could ask you so many questions about it. This was, X-Men 97 got me into comics and superheroes and all that stuff, and I feel like we could talk to you forever, but we know you're busy. So, is there any future projects that you have coming up that we should keep an eye out for? Anything else that you're working on?
Nothing I can talk about.
That you can talk about, for sure.
Yeah, nothing I can talk. I don't know. I mean, oh God, what would I've got my little figurines I've been making, but I'm not even like selling those. I'm just making them. The spoops. But that's just my thing.
Yeah, where can people find that? On your Instagram page or anything?
The underscore spoops on Instagram, but they don't have to follow that. That's just my silly little side thing that I do.
Links in the description.
Links in the But yeah, I don't know. We'll see once things come out. I just did something for Wayfinder with my friend Joaquin DeSantos. He had me do a little character in a short that he did that was beautiful, and that's up on my Instagram. But I don't know. I don't think I can talk about anything that I'm working on.
Yeah,
that's fair.
Which is great because you don't know if I'm actually secretly very unemployed or if I'm on such important things that I can't talk about it. That's what's funny about this stuff is it's like you could just play coy and no one knows. But yeah, no, I think if I say anything, I'll be shot. So that's what.
So important. Got it.
Yeah, very important. Yeah.
Well, I've had such a fun conversation with you today, AJ, and I really appreciate you hanging out with both me and Thomas today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me, and I'm sorry it took so long to get through to me. It's been a year so far, so a lot of stuff has gone on, and in both good and also very bad. So it's been a lot.
Well, you brought us so much joy, I want to say, this year already. And just, you're so kind. You are so just inviting. It's just been awesome to even sit down with you and chat. But thank you so much for doing it.
Thank you. Awesome. And thank you for being memorable with your cool shirt. And that I remember the sleeve and the whole, you were very sweet and kind. And one of the people that stood out as being nice in that when we left WonderCon, I was attacked basically because there was no exit, and you were very sweet in a way that I was like, oh, this person is I'm down with this guy. He's neat.
Yeah,
you were very humble and kind in a way that other people are like, take a picture with me. And I was like,
right. You're like, they're humans too, guys. Relax.
And your shirt stood out too. I was like, it's like you're like a human arcade with the little stamps
the logos
that were on
out. Yeah,
it was really cool. I was like, I like this. But yeah, and Frank, it's so nice to meet you. Thank you guys for having me on, and thank you for also not making me stay in I'm sweating profusely in here, so thank you for keeping this contained.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. You're very welcome. I feel you. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.
Aloha, everybody.
This is the Joystick Show, and mahalo for Schtickin with us.
If you've enjoyed what you've been listening to, we'd really appreciate a follow, subscribe, and a review. Just how we like chatting with our friends, please share this with yours. Feel free to join the squad and follow us at JoyStickShow Joystick Show on Twitter and Instagram, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. And if you feel like submitting topics or questions to be discussed on future episodes, you can email us at joystick.show@gmail.com. As always, thank you, peace out, and make it a great rest of your week.